Right, so buckle up. Another week of 6 hours or more a day without power, with Eskom battling more unit breakdowns over the weekend, still struggling to catch up with maintenance work that was put on hold in the wildcat strike recently. The National Planning Commission wants an energy emergency declared, which they say will open the way to cutting through the cumbersome red tape of new private power deals. And this morning in his weekly letter, the President promising a concrete plan in days. Well, let's speak now to energy expert Chris Yelland. Good evening, Chris. We know from Andre de Ruyter lots of meeting with government officials over the weekend and Eskom. We've seen that message from the President. Do you believe we will see firm action from the President this week?
Well, I hope so. I think the step one is to recognize that we are actually in an emergency situation. It seems to me, it kind of feels like stage 2 to stage 4 load shedding. We've kind of morphed from this being an intermittent sort of process to becoming now almost a permanent state of load shedding. It's doing immense damage to the economy and to the reputation of South Africa as an investment destination, which is something the President has been pushing hard. So I think it certainly is an emergency, and I hope it is recognized as such. And the fact that they spent the weekend talking about it and planning for this apparent announcement by the President in the next few days, I hope, is a sign that maybe it is being taken seriously at the highest level, and that we are likely to see something important, as we did with, for example, that raising of the generation licensing threshold from 1 megawatt to 100 megawatt. That was really quite dramatic. And I hope we're going to see that kind of dramatic intensity that we need.
So last week, the National Planning Commission, which of course is a group of independent advisors to the President, saying that if we declare an energy emergency, it gives Cabinet would have to declare that, but then it would open the way to being able to cut the red tape, cut out NERSA, for example, make it much more direct, which will speed up the process of getting independent power onto the grid. Do you think that is the way to go, Chris?
Yeah, personally, I do think so. I think we need to treat this as an emergency and invoke and let government invoke the kind of emergency powers that are necessary to actually perhaps repeal certain regulations that are holding things back and put in place some temporary regulations that will help enable this. So this is not intended, I'm sure, and I hope, to be a permanent state of affairs, but a temporary intervention to ensure that what can be done is done really quickly without hindrance. And I kind of describe it as a sort of a Marshall Plan, which brings together the resources of the whole country, focused on a single plan of action to achieve a specific result in a certain time. And I think it's really necessary, and it could definitely produce the desired results.
Even if we did see the red tape cut and those independent power producers getting onto the grid in less than 24 months, we would still have to hold on to coal for our baseload power. That's my understanding anyway. So surely we still have to work with power stations that are over 40 years old, coal that keeps getting sabotaged with stones and anything else that will destroy the boilers. So how do we get around the baseload issue, even if we do see independent power producers coming online?
Now, I don't think anybody that I know is suggesting that tomorrow we switch off the coal-fired power stations in South Africa, or the nuclear power station, or the gas-to-power plants, the so-called open-cycle gas turbines. What we're looking at is something that has to be done extra. You know, we've been doing certain things for the last 10 years. It's not working. Clearly, we have to do something different. We have to catch up this backlog, this hole that exists. It's been talked about often, 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts of generation capacity is needed just to plug this gap at the moment. But we actually need more than that, because we need to get ourselves in a state where we have got a generation reserve margin that gives Eskom the necessary headroom to do the deep level maintenance that is required. You know, people sometimes say, oh, we must simply improve the energy availability factor. Well, to do that, you have to do deep level maintenance. You have to switch off generation plant, and that will immediately plunge us into even more load shedding than we currently experience. So in order to enable the necessary headroom, we need to have a generation reserve. And that's why we need to bring on new generation capacity, firstly to fill the existing hole, and secondly to provide sufficient headroom to enable us to start working on this energy availability factor. But right now, Eskom is not in a position to do this deep level maintenance at the required level, because the more it does, the more it has to switch off generators to do this maintenance, and the more load shedding we have. So we kind of in this vicious cycle that we have to overcome, and the way to do that is to bring on new generation capacity fast. And that does not mean we must stop maintenance. It doesn't mean to say we must close power stations, coal-fired power stations. It doesn't mean to say we shouldn't concentrate on energy efficiency, on demand-side management, and all these good things. I take that for granted. That is what all good utilities should do and are doing and should be doing more of. I'm looking at what do we have to do beyond the
basics.
Norm? What do we have to do that is extraordinary in order to overcome this extraordinary problem that we face?
So, Chris, you mentioned a vicious cycle. Perhaps we could handle a vicious cycle, but not a death spiral. I want to get your sense of what South Africans, as electricity consumers, what should we prepare ourselves for? Because I think we can handle being told straight. And I'm seeing level 4 again this week. We did know that Eskom said it might take a few weeks to get us out of the level 4, but it seems to have gone on longer than they'd hoped. Must we prepare for a reality of level 4 for the next couple of years, until even if they do speed up the IPPs? Or do you think that this phase is particularly nasty and we could emerge and move into a sort of level 2 normality in the next few weeks? Level with us.
Well, I believe that the electricity sector in South Africa, and in fact globally, is undergoing a quiet revolution. And the way in which electricity is delivered is changing. Now, it doesn't mean to say that tomorrow Eskom is going to be redundant. It doesn't mean to say they're going to disappear. But there is a changing set of roles taking place. And Eskom clearly cannot meet demand. That's why we have load shedding. And so customers need, in my view, to start to realize that they have to take ownership for their own energy futures and to become part of the solution, and to put in generation capacity, what we call self-generation, distributed generation, and embedded generation, to supplement their electricity needs. Now, this does not mean going off the grid. It simply means, in parallel to one's grid connection, put in additional generation capacity which can supplement your energy needs and thereby reduce the burden on Eskom, which is currently unable to meet. And this will relieve Eskom of its burden and will relieve the entire country of load shedding. So the more all of us get involved in looking after our energy futures by supplementing our energy needs, the better it is for the whole country. And Eskom is not going to disappear. It's just going to enable Eskom to be able to meet its burden and to deliver what it can deliver.
All right, so while we wait on a word from the President this week, we should be considering whether it's in our individual homes or even what we're seeing at some municipalities, an attempt to bring in their own mini-grids or even get power from perhaps shopping centres that have their own electricity sources. It's all hands on deck time. That's what I'm hearing from you, Chris Yelland, and thank you very much for chatting to us this evening. That, of course, is energy expert Chris Yelland.